I sit in this courtroom with my hands trembling, watching my sister's lawyer accuse me of kidnapping 3 children 10 years ago. Rachel sits across the aisle in her designer dress, fake tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. My fingers grip an envelope in my lap so tightly the paper crumples at the edges. The judge asks for my response. And I think back to that summer afternoon when my sister dropped off 3 crying kids, promising just 1 hour, then vanished without a trace. Now those children call me Mom, and Rachel wants them back. 10 years ago, I was 27 years old, working as a 3rd-grade teacher in suburban Denver, living in a modest 1-bedroom apartment that barely fit my life, let alone anyone else's. It was a Saturday afternoon in July, one of those perfect Colorado days where the sun felt warm but not oppressive, and I had been planning to grade papers and maybe meet friends for dinner later. Then Rachel showed up. I heard the frantic knocking first, then opened my door to find my older sister standing there with 3 small children clinging to her legs. Rachel was 32 then, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her makeup was smudged under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore clothes that looked slept in. Behind her stood Emma, who was 5 years old, with wide brown eyes that already looked too serious for her age. The twins, Jacob and Sophie, were only 3, and both of them had tears and snot running down their faces. "Amy, thank God you're home," Rachel said, already pushing past me into my apartment. "I need you to watch the kids for just 1 hour. I have this really important meeting and my babysitter canceled and I'm already late." I stood there in shock as she herded the children inside. Emma clutched a stuffed rabbit that looked like it had seen better days. Jacob sucked his thumb while Sophie cried openly, reaching for her mother. "Rachel, wait," I said. "What meeting? Where?" I wasn't expecting this. "It's a job interview," she said quickly, setting down a diaper bag that looked practically empty. "A really good opportunity. I'll be back by dinner time, I promise. We can get pizza, right, kids? Aunt Amy will get you ice cream." The children didn't look convinced. Emma's bottom lip trembled. Jacob pressed himself against the wall. Sophie wailed louder. "Rachel, I don't know if this is a good time," I started. But she was already backing toward the door. "You're a lifesaver, sis. I owe you big time. Just 1 hour. 2 tops." She blew kisses at the kids and disappeared out my door before I could say another word. The door clicked shut, and suddenly I was alone with 3 traumatized-looking children in my tiny apartment. That was the last time I saw my sister for 10 years. The first 2 hours, I tried to stay calm. The kids were inconsolable. Emma kept asking where Mommy went. The twins wouldn't stop crying. I found some crackers in my pantry and turned on cartoons, which helped a little. I called Rachel's cell phone. It rang once, then went to a generic voicemail. I called again. This time it went straight to voicemail. On my 3rd attempt, I got a message that the number was no longer in service. My stomach dropped. I called our mother next, even though Rachel and Mom hadn't spoken in over 3 years. Mom had cut Rachel off after Rachel's drug problems got too severe, after the arrests and the rehab stints that never stuck. Mom's voice was cold when she answered. "If this is about Rachel, I don't want to hear it," Mom said. "She left her kids with me," I said. "3 kids, Mom." She said 1 hour, and now her phone is disconnected. There was a long pause. "That's Rachel's problem, not mine. She made her choices. I warned her about those children. I warned her she wasn't ready to be a mother. But what am I supposed to do?" "Whatever you think is right, Amy. I'm done cleaning up her messes." And she hung up. By the end of the first week, I was running on no sleep and maximum panic. I had reported Rachel missing to the police after 72 hours, but they seemed uninterested. "Adults have the right to go where they want," the officer told me. "Lots of parents drop their kids with relatives. Give it time." But I knew this was different. I took emergency leave from my teaching job. I maxed out 2 credit cards buying toddler beds, clothes, diapers, food. My 1-bedroom apartment became a cramped disaster zone of toys and tears. Emma wet the bed every single night, waking up crying for her mother. The twins refused to eat anything I offered. Jacob would only drink milk. Sophie threw tantrums that lasted hours. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and terrified. I contacted everyone I could think of who knew Rachel. Her ex-boyfriend, Marcus, told me he hadn't seen her in 6 months, and good riddance. Her former friends said she'd burned all those bridges months ago, borrowing money she never repaid, showing up high to their homes, putting their own families at risk. One friend, Dana, said something that chilled me. Rachel told me once that those kids were the worst mistake of her life. I think she meant it. After 3 months of no contact, no leads, and no sign Rachel was coming back, I met with a social worker. The woman, Mrs. Chen, came to my apartment and documented everything. The children's living conditions, their emotional state, the abandonment. She was kind, but professional. "You need to file for emergency guardianship," she said. "These children need stability and legal protection." So I did. I went to court, presented all my evidence of Rachel's abandonment, and a judge granted me temporary custody. Rachel's parental rights weren't terminated, just suspended pending her return. I became their legal guardian, responsible for 3 traumatized children I barely knew how to care for. But after 6 months of sleepless nights and endless worry, I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Bradford, a former police detective who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. It took him 3 weeks and cost me $2,000 I didn't have, but he found her. Rachel was living in Las Vegas, under the name Rachel Morrison, which was her middle name. She had moved in with a man she'd met online, a wealthy real estate investor who owned a penthouse overlooking the Strip. Tom sent me photos: Rachel at nightclubs, drinking champagne, Rachel by a pool, laughing, Rachel in designer clothes, her hair professionally done, looking happier than I'd ever seen her. She had completely moved on, started a new life. Left her 3 children behind like they were old furniture she no longer needed. "Do you want me to approach her?" Tom asked. "Yes," I whispered. 2 days later, Tom called me back. His voice was different, flat. "I spoke to her," he said. "I identified myself as a private investigator hired by you regarding her children. Do you want to know what she said?" My heart pounded. "Tell me," she said, and I quote, "Tell my sister I'm not coming back. Those kids were holding me back from my real life. She always wanted children anyway. They're hers now. Don't contact me again." Then she shut the door in my face. I sat on my couch in my tiny apartment, surrounded by toys and children's drawings, and felt something inside me break, and then reform, harder than before. Rachel hadn't left her children by accident. She hadn't been kidnapped or hurt or lost. She had planned this. She had dumped her kids on me intentionally, knowing I would take care of them, knowing I wouldn't turn them away. She had chosen her freedom over her children. And in that moment, sitting there alone while 3 little ones slept in the next room, I made my choice too. If Rachel didn't want these children, I did. I would give them the life they deserved, the love they needed, the mother they'd lost. I would become their mother in every way that mattered. The next 5 years were the hardest of my life, but also the most meaningful. I gave up my teaching career because the hours didn't work with 3 young children who needed stability and therapy and constant attention. I took a remote position with an educational software company that paid less but let me work from home. My friends slowly drifted away because I could never go out anymore, never be spontaneous, never be the carefree Amy they'd known. My dating life became non-existent. I was a 30-year-old woman with 3 kids and mountains of debt, and not many men wanted that reality. But the children needed me. Emma, Sophie, and Jacob were so damaged from the abandonment. Emma developed severe separation anxiety and would panic if I left her sight. She couldn't sleep alone and had nightmares where she'd wake up screaming that everyone was leaving her. The twins had developmental delays from neglect and needed speech therapy, occupational therapy, play therapy. Every week we had appointments. Every month I went further into debt. I had over $20,000 on credit cards and no idea how I'd ever pay it back. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Nights when all 3 kids were sick and I hadn't slept in 48 hours, and I thought I couldn't do this anymore. Nights when the bills piled up and my bank account was overdrawn and I didn't know how I'd buy groceries. But then, there were the other moments. The small victories that made it all worthwhile. Emma's first day of kindergarten, where she walked into school without crying, turning back to wave at me with a brave smile. The twins finally learning to talk in full sentences, calling me mama for the first time. Jacob scoring his first soccer goal and running to me in the stands, his face lit up with pure joy. Sophie bringing home a drawing from preschool, a crayon picture of our family, where she'd written my mom with an arrow pointing to me. Those moments saved me. Those moments showed me I was doing something right. We created our own traditions because we were our own family now. Friday night, movie nights, with popcorn and blankets on the couch. Saturday morning pancakes where the kids helped, and we always made a mess. Sunday park visits where we'd pack sandwiches and spend hours playing. Holidays that were small and modest but filled with laughter. I took photos constantly, documenting everything, creating new memories to replace the painful ones. After 5 years of being their guardian, when I was 32 and the kids were older, more stable, more healed, I made the decision to adopt them officially. I consulted with a family lawyer who explained the process. Since Rachel had been gone for 5 years with no contact and no support, and since she'd told the private investigator she wasn't coming back, we had grounds to terminate her parental rights and finalize an adoption. But legally, Rachel had to be notified. The process server tried for weeks to find her. He went to Las Vegas, but she'd moved. He tracked her through various addresses, various boyfriends, always one step behind. Finally, after exhausting all reasonable efforts to locate her, the court agreed we'd done due diligence. Rachel's parental rights were terminated in absentia for abandonment and failure to support. On a Tuesday morning in March, I stood in a courtroom with Emma, Jacob, and Sophie, dressed in their best clothes. The judge was a kind woman named Judge Martinez, who smiled at the children and asked them if they understood what adoption meant. "It means Amy will be our forever mom," Emma said, and she was 10 years old then, confident and bright. "That's exactly right," Judge Martinez said. She signed the papers. "Congratulations on your family." We went home with new birth certificates that listed me as their mother. We changed their last name from Rachel's to mine. We had a celebration dinner at their favorite restaurant where they picked dessert first, and we didn't care about rules. The kids were so happy, so secure, so loved. For the first time in 5 years, I felt safe. Rachel was gone. The adoption was final. We were a real family, legally and emotionally. I even started dating again. Met a man named Brian who was kind and patient and good with the kids. I got promoted at work, finally earning enough to pay down my debt. We moved out of our cramped apartment and into a small 3-bedroom house in a good school district with a backyard where the kids could play. Emma was thriving in school, making straight A's and talking about becoming a doctor someday. Jacob had become a talented soccer player, practicing for hours in our backyard. Sophie discovered she loved art and filled our house with paintings and drawings. Our walls were covered with family photos, report cards, soccer medals, art projects. There wasn't a single picture of Rachel anywhere. The kids barely remembered her anymore. When they talked about their early childhood, they talked about me. I was their mother in every sense that mattered. Life was good. Life was finally, beautifully stable. Then, 1 month ago, everything shattered. I came home from work to find a certified letter in my mailbox. The return address was a law firm in Denver. Prestigious and expensive. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from Rachel's lawyer. The letter stated that my sister was suing for wrongful custody and demanding the children be returned to her immediately. She claimed I had manipulated the situation, had kept her from her children, had poisoned them against her. She alleged procedural errors in the adoption notification process. She wanted full custody, immediately, and she was prepared to fight. The court date was in 2 weeks. I stood in my kitchen, the letter shaking in my hands, and felt my entire world collapse. I thought Rachel was gone forever. I thought we were safe. I thought the adoption was ironclad. But Rachel had come back. Emma found me crying at the kitchen table. "Mom? What's wrong?" I tried to hide the letter, but she was 15 now, old enough to understand things. She saw the lawyer's letterhead. She saw her birth mother's name. "Is that from her?" Emma asked, her voice small and scared. I couldn't lie. Yes. What does she want? I looked at my daughter, this brave, brilliant girl I'd raised for 10 years. She wants you back. Emma's face went white. No, she can't. You're our mom. She left us. The twins came in then, 13 years old and curious about the commotion. When they learned what was happening, Jacob had a panic attack, and Sophie went silent. A scary kind of silent that reminded me of those early days after the abandonment. That night, none of us slept. We huddled together in my bed like we used to do when they were small and scared. But this time, I was just as terrified as they were, because I knew that biological mothers had strong legal standing, even after abandonment, and I knew that Rachel wouldn't have come back after 10 years unless she had a reason. I just didn't know what that reason was yet, but I was about to find out, and it would be even worse than I imagined. The next morning, I called every family lawyer in Denver until I found one who could see me immediately. Her name was Jennifer Walsh, and her office was in a high-rise downtown with a view of the mountains. She was in her 40s, sharp and professional, with a reputation for winning difficult custody cases. I sat across from her desk and told her everything: the abandonment, the adoption, the letter. She listened carefully, taking notes, her expression growing more concerned. "Let me see your adoption papers," she said. I handed them over. She reviewed them for what felt like hours, occasionally typing something on her computer, cross-referencing documents. Finally, she looked up. "The adoption appears legally sound," she said. "But Rachel's lawyer is claiming procedural errors in the notification process. They're arguing that she never received proper notice of the termination hearing. But she was impossible to find," I said. "The process server tried everything. I believe you, but if they can prove she wasn't adequately notified, they might be able to challenge the adoption." Jennifer leaned back in her chair. "There's something else you should know. Biological mothers have very strong legal standing in Colorado, even after abandonment. The courts favor reunification whenever possible. The fact that 10 years have passed works in your favor, but it's not a guarantee." My stomach dropped. So she could win? It's possible, especially if she presents well in court and has a compelling story. "Do you know why she's coming back now?" "After all this time? No idea. I'll find out." Jennifer made some calls while I sat there feeling numb. When she hung up, her expression was grim. Her lawyer is from Sullivan and Associates. They're one of the most expensive firms in the state. Someone is bankrolling this. "Rachel never had money," I said. "She was always broke." "Well, she has resources now. My retainer is $15,000, and that's just to start. This case could cost you significantly more if it goes to trial." $15,000. I didn't have $15,000. I'd just finished paying off my credit cards. I'd just started saving for the kids' college funds. But I didn't have a choice. I wrote the check and Jennifer got to work. Over the next week, things got so much worse. Rachel gave an interview to a local news station. I was at work when Emma called me, crying. "Mom, turn on Channel 7. She's on TV." I pulled up the live stream on my computer and watched in horror as my sister, dressed in a modest blouse and looking appropriately sorrowful, told a completely fabricated story to a sympathetic reporter. "I left my children with my sister for what was supposed to be a few hours," Rachel said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I had a job interview that day. On the way home, I was in a terrible car accident. I woke up in the hospital with amnesia. I spent years in psychiatric facilities trying to recover my memories. When I finally did, I began searching for my babies. Imagine my horror when I discovered my own sister had adopted them without my knowledge or consent. She blocked all my attempts to contact them. I just want my children back. I want to be their mother again." It was all lies, every single word. But the reporter ate it up. The story went viral within hours. "Heartbroken mother searches for children stolen by sister," the headline read. The comment section filled with people calling me a monster, a kidnapper, a woman who stole her sister's children out of jealousy. My phone exploded with messages. Angry strangers found my social media and sent death threats. Someone posted my home address online. That night, someone spray-painted "child thief" across my garage door in red letters 3 feet high. My neighbors, who had known us for years, started avoiding eye contact. The kids saw everything. Emma, who was old enough to have social media, saw the comments calling me evil. Jacob's friends at school asked him if his mom was really a kidnapper. Sophie came home crying because someone told her she'd been stolen. "It's not true," I told them over and over. "None of it is true. She left you. I saved you." But the court of public opinion had already decided I was guilty. Jennifer worked around the clock to counter Rachel's narrative. She hired a private investigator who discovered the truth behind Rachel's sudden reappearance. And what he found made everything make horrible sense. 6 months ago, my father had died. I hadn't known because I'd been estranged from him for years, just like Rachel had been. He'd been a difficult man, emotionally distant, and after he and Mom divorced when I was a teenager, we'd rarely spoken. But apparently, before he died, he'd gotten sober and tried to make amends. He'd built a successful consulting business and accumulated significant wealth. His will, which Jennifer obtained through legal channels, specified that his estate would be divided equally among all his grandchildren. Emma, Jacob, and Sophie were each entitled to $250,000, held in trust until they turned 18. But as their legal guardian, I controlled those trust funds. I could use them for education, medical expenses, anything for their benefit. Rachel had found out about the inheritance, and suddenly, after 10 years of not caring about her children, she wanted them back. Jennifer's investigator dug deeper and found that Rachel had racked up over $400,000 in gambling debts in Las Vegas. She owed money to casinos, loan sharks, dangerous people. She'd received threats. Her boyfriend had left her when the debt collectors came calling. She didn't want her children. She wanted their money. "This is good for us," Jennifer said when she showed me the evidence. "This proves her motives are financial, not maternal." But 3 days before the court hearing, things escalated in a way I never saw coming. I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. Emma answered it before I could stop her. Rachel stood on my porch with a news camera crew behind her. "My babies!" Rachel cried, pushing past Emma into my house. "Oh my God, you've gotten so big." She tried to hug Emma, who screamed and backed away. Jacob and Sophie heard the commotion and came running. When they saw Rachel, Sophie started hyperventilating and Jacob hid behind me. "Get away from us!" Emma yelled. "You're not our mother." Rachel's face crumpled. She reached for the kids, crying dramatically. "Don't you remember me? I'm your mommy. I've been searching for you for so long." "Get out of my house," I said, stepping between her and the children. "You're not welcome here." "See?" Rachel turned to the cameras. "See what she's done to them? She's turned my children against their own mother. This is parental alienation. This is exactly what I've been telling people." Sophie had a full panic attack. Jacob was crying. Emma was shaking with rage and fear. I grabbed my phone and called 911 while trying to shield the kids from the cameras. "Please leave," I said. "You're upsetting them." "I have every right to see my children," Rachel said. But she was backing toward the door, making sure the cameras caught every moment. "The judge will hear about this. Everyone will see what you've done." The police arrived and escorted her off my property. But the damage was done. That night, the footage aired on the news. But Rachel's lawyer had edited it to remove the children's terror and my calm requests for her to leave. Instead, it showed Rachel crying and reaching for her kids while I stood between them, looking cold and angry. It showed the children refusing their mother while Rachel sobbed. The edited version made me look like a monster who had brainwashed 3 children into hating their biological mother. The online harassment intensified. Someone threw a rock through our window. My car tires were slashed in my work parking lot. The kids were terrified to go to school. Jennifer called me with devastating news. "The judge assigned to your case is Marilyn Harper. She has a reputation for favoring biological parents. Combined with this media coverage, we're in serious trouble. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that we might lose." That night, I sat in my bedroom with the envelope Jennifer had prepared. the one containing all our evidence about Rachel's real motives. I hadn't wanted to use some of this evidence because it would devastate the children to know how little their biological mother actually cared about them. But I was out of options. I had to fight with everything I had. Because losing wasn't just about losing a court case, it was about losing my children, the 3 people I loved more than anything in the world. And I would do anything to protect them. The courthouse looked imposing under the gray November sky. I arrived early with Jennifer, both of us carrying briefcases full of evidence. The kids were with my neighbor because Jennifer advised keeping them away until absolutely necessary. The gallery was already packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and Rachel's supporters who believed her fabricated story. Rachel arrived like she was attending a premiere. She wore an elegant navy dress, pearls, hair professionally styled. Her lawyer was a man named Richard Sullivan, senior partner at Sullivan & Associates, known for his aggressive tactics and high win rate. They looked confident, polished, prepared. I wore a simple gray dress I'd bought on sale, my hair pulled back, minimal makeup. I looked exactly like what I was, a tired woman who'd spent 10 years raising 3 children on a limited budget. Next to Rachel's glamour, I felt small and insignificant. Judge Marilyn Harper entered, and we all stood. She was in her 60s, stern-faced, with a reputation for being tough but fair. Jennifer had warned me that Judge Harper had written several opinions emphasizing the importance of biological family connections and giving parents second chances. My stomach was in knots. The hearing began with opening statements. Richard Sullivan painted a heartbreaking picture of Rachel as a victim of circumstance. A mother who had suffered amnesia and medical trauma, who had spent years searching for her lost children, who had finally found them only to discover they'd been adopted without her knowledge. He called it a travesty of justice and a violation of parental rights. Jennifer countered with the truth. Rachel had deliberately abandoned her children, had told a private investigator she wasn't coming back, had lived openly in Las Vegas while making no attempt to contact her kids. The adoption was legal and proper, given the circumstances. But I could see Judge Harper's expression. She looked skeptical of our claims. Then Rachel took the stand. She was devastating. She cried at all the right moments. She spoke in a soft, broken voice about waking up in a hospital bed with no memory of her children, about the years of psychiatric treatment, about the moment her memories returned, and the horror of realizing she'd lost 10 years with her babies. I was sick, Rachel sobbed. I needed help, but I'm better now. I've been sober for 3 years. I have a stable home. I just want the chance to be a mother to my children. They're my whole world. I made mistakes when they were young, but don't I deserve a second chance? Don't they deserve to know their real mother? Richard Sullivan introduced expert witnesses. A psychiatrist testified about trauma and memory loss. Another expert discussed sibling rivalry and how it could lead to possessive behavior. They had character witnesses who swore Rachel was reformed, devoted, desperate to reunite with her kids. He argued that the adoption was invalid because Rachel hadn't received adequate notice. He claimed the process server hadn't tried hard enough to find her. He presented legal precedents where adoptions had been overturned for procedural failures. The gallery murmured sympathetically. A few people wiped tears. Judge Harper listened intently, occasionally taking notes. Then it was my turn. Jennifer called me to the stand. My hands shook as I swore to tell the truth. I looked out at the courtroom and saw Rachel staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Jennifer guided me through my testimony. I explained how Rachel had left the children, how her phone had been disconnected immediately, how I'd spent months trying to find her. I talked about the years of therapy, the financial struggles, the love and dedication I'd poured into raising them. These children were traumatized and abandoned, I said. I gave them stability, love, a home. I'm the only mother they've known for 10 years. But when Richard Sullivan cross-examined me, he was brutal. Isn't it true, Miss Amy, that you resented your sister's beauty and success? He asked. No, that's not true. Didn't you tell friends you wished you had children of your own? Maybe in passing, but... And when your sister left her children with you, didn't you see this as an opportunity? A chance to finally have the family you wanted? No, she abandoned them. Or did you make it difficult for her to come back? Did you block her attempts to contact the children? She never tried to contact them. How do you know? If you'd made yourself impossible to find, how would she have reached you? Around and around we went. He twisted every answer. Made me sound possessive and manipulative. He suggested I'd kept the children out of jealousy, that I'd fabricated evidence, that I'd brainwashed them into rejecting their mother. By the time I left the stand, I was crying, and I could see doubt on Judge Harper's face. During the lunch recess, Jennifer pulled me aside. We need to call the children. The judge needs to hear from them directly. They're terrified, I said. I don't want to put them through this. We don't have a choice. Rachel is winning. That afternoon, the court brought in Emma, Jacob, and Sophie. A child psychologist conducted interviews in the judge's chambers, with both lawyers present but the kids unable to see me or Rachel. They were gone for over 2 hours. When they emerged, Emma looked shell-shocked. The twins were crying. The psychologist submitted her report to the judge, and Jennifer managed to get a copy. My heart sank as I read it. The psychologist noted that the children showed strong attachment to me and fear of Rachel. However, she also noted signs of what she called parental alienation syndrome. She said the children's reactions seemed extreme and possibly coached. She recommended a reunification therapy program where the children would spend time with Rachel under supervision while the matter was resolved in court. "This is a disaster," Jennifer whispered. "She's recommending the judge give Rachel access to the kids." As the day ended, Judge Harper made a preliminary statement. "This is a deeply troubling case. I'm concerned about the children's welfare and their relationship with their biological mother. I'm inclined to order supervised visits while I consider the evidence more fully. This court will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments." Rachel's lawyer smiled. Rachel herself looked triumphant. Outside the courthouse, Rachel spoke to the gathered media. "Justice is finally being served. Soon I'll have my babies back where they belong." That night was the worst of my life. The kids were inconsolable. Emma locked herself in her room. Jacob had nightmares. Sophie wouldn't eat. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Rachel's friends know where you live. Drop the case, or else." I called the police to report the threat, but they said there wasn't much they could do about an anonymous text. An hour later, I heard glass breaking. Someone had thrown a brick through my living room window. By the time the police arrived, whoever did it was long gone. I sat up all night with a baseball bat, terrified and exhausted, watching my children sleep and wondering if I was about to lose them forever. Jennifer called at 7 in the morning. "We need to use the envelope today. All of it. We're out of options." I thought about what was in that envelope. Evidence that would destroy any remaining illusion the kids had about their biological mother. Evidence that would hurt them to learn. But Jennifer was right. We were out of options. "Do it," I said. Day 2 of the hearing felt different. The gallery was even more packed. Word having spread that this was the day for final arguments and the judge's decision. Rachel looked confident as ever, whispering with her lawyer. I sat with Jennifer, the envelope between us on the table, my last hope contained in paper and ink. Richard Sullivan gave his closing argument first. He hammered on parental rights, second chances, and the sacred bond between mother and child. He painted Rachel as a victim of medical trauma and me as an opportunist who'd taken advantage of her sister's misfortune. He requested immediate custody transfer, with supervised visitation rights for me once a month. "These children belong with their mother," he concluded. "Biology matters, blood matters. Miss Amy may have cared for them, and we acknowledge her efforts, but she is not their mother. Rachel is. And it's time these children were reunited with the woman who gave them life." Then he dropped the custody arrangement proposal on the judge's desk. I watched Judge Harper review it, her expression neutral. My heart pounded. The proposal would give Rachel immediate physical custody, control of the children's trust funds as their guardian, and relegate me to barely more than a stranger in their lives. Rachel actually smiled at me across the courtroom. She leaned over to her lawyer and whispered something. He nodded. Then she caught my eye and mouthed 2 words. "You lose." Jennifer stood for our closing argument. Your Honor, before I proceed, I need to present critical evidence that has come to light through our investigation. This evidence speaks directly to Miss Rachel's true motives and character. Richard Sullivan jumped up. Objection. Any evidence should have been submitted during discovery. This evidence was obtained legally through ongoing investigation, Jennifer said calmly. It's crucial to the court's decision regarding these children's welfare. Judge Harper frowned. Approach the bench, both of you. Jennifer and Richard had a heated, whispered conversation with the judge. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Judge Harper's expression shift from annoyed to intrigued. I'll review this evidence in chambers first, Judge Harper finally announced. We'll take a 30-minute recess. This was it. Jennifer handed me the envelope, and I carried it up to the judge's chambers with shaking hands. Rachel's confident expression faltered slightly. She didn't know what was in that envelope, but she knew it wasn't good. In Judge Harper's private chambers, I laid out the contents piece by piece on her desk. First, the documented statement from the private investigator who'd found Rachel 10 years ago. The recording was clear. Rachel's voice saying, "Tell my sister I'm not coming back. Those kids were holding me back from my real life. She always wanted children anyway. They're hers now." Judge Harper's eyebrows rose as she listened. Next, the financial forensics Jennifer's investigator had compiled. Bank statements, casino records, loan documents. Rachel owed $470,000 to various creditors. The timeline showed she'd filed the custody suit exactly 3 weeks after learning about her children's inheritance from my father's estate. She only came back for the money, I said quietly. Then came the background check on Rachel's current boyfriend, Arthur Sterling. His criminal record was extensive: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. He'd just been released from federal prison 6 months ago after serving 3 years for running a Ponzi scheme that defrauded elderly victims out of over $2 million. Police surveillance photos showed him and Rachel at expensive restaurants and casinos, living far beyond any legitimate means. Judge Harper's expression grew darker. But the most damning evidence was the recent recordings. Jennifer's investigator had legally recorded Rachel in public spaces, coffee shops, and restaurants, talking to friends about her custody suit. We played them for the judge. Rachel's voice laughing. I don't actually want those brats back. Can you imagine? 3 teenagers? God, no, I just need access to their trust funds. Another recording. Once I get custody, I'll ship them off to boarding school. Problem solved. I'll be $500,000 richer and kid-free. And the worst one. My sister wasted 10 years raising them for me. Now I get to cash in. Easiest money I'll ever make. Judge Harper's face transformed from stern neutrality to barely contained fury. She listened to every recording twice. Your Honor, Jennifer said carefully, Miss Rachel has made no secret among her friends that this is purely a financial play. She has significant gambling debts, a criminal boyfriend, and she's already spent money she doesn't have based on the assumption she'll win this case. She's purchased a luxury car, expensive jewelry, and booked a 3-week vacation to the Caribbean, all on credit, all dated after she filed the custody suit. Jennifer showed receipts for all of it. Rachel had told the car dealer, the jeweler, and the travel agent the same story. She was coming into $750,000 very soon. Judge Harper looked at me. Do the children know about these recordings? About what their biological mother said? This was the question I'd been dreading. Not yet, Your Honor. I didn't want them to hear how little she cares about them. They've been through enough. I see. Judge Harper stared at the evidence for a long moment. Give me a few minutes alone. We left her chambers and returned to the courtroom. Rachel looked nervous now. Richard Sullivan kept glancing at us, trying to read our expressions. 15 minutes later, Judge Harper called everyone back into chambers. Her face was grim. Miss Rachel, she said coldly, I have some questions for you. Rachel entered with her lawyer. Judge Harper confronted her with selected pieces of evidence. Nothing that would reveal her sources or methods, but enough to make the point. Did you tell a private investigator 10 years ago that you weren't coming back for your children? Rachel's face went pale. I was confused then. I was sick. Are you currently indebted to casinos and loan sharks for over $400,000? I've had some financial difficulties, but did you file this custody suit 3 weeks after learning your children inherited money from their grandfather? The timing is coincidental. I'd been searching for them. Save it, Judge Harper snapped. I've heard enough. We're going back into the courtroom. We filed back in. The gallery buzzed with speculation. Judge Harper's expression gave nothing away, but I saw Rachel's hands trembling now. Her mask of sorrowful motherhood was starting to crack. Jennifer began her closing argument, carefully revealing what we'd uncovered without playing the recordings publicly to protect the children. Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Rachel's motivations are purely financial. She has made no genuine attempt to reunite with her children. She has made no effort to understand their emotional needs or establish a real relationship. She has lied repeatedly under oath about her past actions and current intentions. She is not a mother seeking her children. She is a debtor seeking access to their inheritance. But Richard Sullivan wasn't giving up. He jumped to his feet with one last desperate gambit. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce a new witness, Dr. Martin Cheswick, a psychiatrist who has been treating Miss Rachel for the past year. A man in an expensive suit entered the courtroom. He took the stand and testified that Rachel had been under his care for severe psychiatric issues, including dissociative disorder and post-traumatic stress. Miss Rachel was not herself when those statements were recorded, Dr. Cheswick claimed. She was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. Her current behavior, her desire to reunite with her children, represents her true, healthy self. Mental illness does not disqualify someone from being a parent. With proper treatment, which she's receiving, she can be a good mother to these children. He presented medical records, prescriptions, therapy notes. It all looked official and legitimate. The gallery murmured. Even Judge Harper looked uncertain. There were legal precedents supporting mentally ill parents retaining or regaining custody if they were in treatment. Jennifer furiously scribbled notes. I felt victory slipping away again. Rachel was going to win on an insanity defense. Your Honor, Richard Sullivan said. My client was sick. She's getting help. Family courts have consistently held that mental illness, when properly treated, is not grounds to deny parental rights. We have multiple precedents. We'll review those precedents, Judge Harper interrupted. This hearing is adjourned until tomorrow morning, while I consider this new evidence. As the courtroom cleared, I felt defeated. Rachel had found a loophole. She'd claim mental illness, get sympathy, and still win custody. That night, Jennifer worked frantically. At 2 a.m, she called me with news that would change everything. I found something, she said. Dr. Cheswick isn't licensed to practice in Colorado. His credentials are from an online university. The medical records he presented are forgeries. He's not even a real doctor. He's Arthur Sterling's friend, and they paid him $5,000 to testify. Can you prove it? I already did. I'm emailing the evidence to Judge Harper right now. This case is about to blow wide open. Morning brought a storm. I arrived at the courthouse to find police officers in the hallway and Judge Harper looking absolutely furious. Rachel and her lawyer were already there, both looking confused and nervous. We're reconvening immediately, Judge Harper announced. In light of overnight developments, once everyone was seated, Judge Harper addressed the courtroom. Last night, I received evidence that Dr. Martin Cheswick, who testified yesterday, is not a licensed psychiatrist in the state of Colorado. In fact, his credentials appear to be fraudulent. The medical records he submitted are forgeries. Mr. Sullivan, did you verify your expert witness's credentials? Richard Sullivan stood, his face red. Your Honor, I relied on information provided by my client. Your client provided you with a fake doctor who committed perjury in my courtroom, Judge Harper snapped. This is serious misconduct. Mr. Sullivan, you're lucky I don't hold you in contempt. Miss Rachel, you attempted to defraud this court. Rachel jumped to her feet. I didn't know. Arthur said he could help. Sit down, her lawyer hissed, but it was too late. Arthur Sterling, your boyfriend, arranged for a fake psychiatrist to testify on your behalf? Judge Harper's voice was ice cold. The same Arthur Sterling who is a convicted fraudster currently under investigation. Rachel realized her mistake. Her face crumbled. I just wanted my children back. No, Judge Harper said. You wanted their money. The evidence makes that abundantly clear. But before Judge Harper could continue, Emma stood up in the gallery. She'd been sitting with the twins, and I hadn't even known they were there. My neighbor must have brought them. Your Honor, Emma said, her voice shaking but determined. Can I say something? Judge Harper looked surprised but nodded. Given your age, I'll allow it. Come forward. Emma walked to the front of the courtroom. She was 15 years old, nearly as tall as me now, with her father's eyes and a strength I recognized as her own. Jacob and Sophie followed her, holding hands. I remember, Emma said simply. I remember the day she left us. Rachel's face went white. I was 5 years old, Emma continued. But I remember. She'd been packing boxes for days before that Saturday. She told me she was going on a long trip. That morning, she made us wear our oldest, most worn-out clothes. She didn't pack any of our favorite toys. When we got in the car, I asked her where we were going, and she said we were going to Aunt Amy's house. Emma's voice stayed steady, but tears rolled down her face. I asked her when she was coming back. She looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, Probably never, sweetheart. Mommy needs to start her life over, and she can't do that with you three. I asked her if she still loved us, and she said, Love isn't always enough. The courtroom was completely silent. Rachel sat frozen, staring at Emma with horror. When we got to Aunt Amy's apartment, she told us to go inside. She handed Aunt Amy the diaper bag and said, They're yours now. I can't do this anymore. Aunt Amy looked confused and tried to stop her, but she was already leaving. As she drove away, I stood at the window and watched her car disappear. I knew she wasn't coming back. Emma turned to look directly at Rachel. I tried to forget. I was little, and Amy helped me heal. But I never completely forgot. And when you showed up with your lawyer, I remembered everything. You didn't abandon us by accident. You planned it. You chose to leave us. Jacob spoke next, his voice quiet. I don't remember much from when we were little, but I remember being scared all the time before we came to live with Amy. I remember you yelling. I remember being hungry. I remember you locking us in our room when you went out. Sophie added, Amy taught me what a mother is. A mother shows up. A mother loves you even when it's hard. A mother doesn't leave. She looked at Rachel with something like pity. You're not our mother. You were just the person who gave birth to us. Emma turned back to Judge Harper. Whatever money there is, we don't want it if it means going with her. We'd rather be poor with Amy than rich with someone who doesn't love us. Please don't make us leave our mom. Rachel suddenly cracked. She stood up, her lawyer grabbing her arm to stop her, but she shook him off. Fine, Rachel screamed. You want the truth? I never wanted those kids. They ruined my body. They ruined my life. They ruined every chance I had at happiness. I only came back because my father's will said they get money. Money that should have been mine. He cut me off years ago and gave his fortune to 3 grandchildren he never even met. It's not fair. Her lawyer tried desperately to silence her, but she was beyond controlling now. I don't want them, Rachel shrieked. I never wanted them. I was 27 when Emma was born and my life was just starting. Then I got pregnant with the twins and I was trapped. Do you know what it's like to be trapped by 3 children you never wanted? I tried to be a mother, but I hated it. I hated every minute. So yes, I left them with my sister because she always wanted kids and I knew she'd take them. She pointed at me with a shaking hand. My father always loved Amy more anyway. Perfect Amy who became a teacher and made good choices. Well, let her have my mistakes. Let her clean up my mess. I came back for the money that's rightfully mine. Those kids were supposed to be my ticket out of debt. That's all they were ever good for. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harper banged her gavel. Order! Miss Rachel, sit down immediately. But, Rachel wasn't done. 10 years of resentment poured out in a toxic flood. She ranted about how the children had stolen her youth, how Amy had always been jealous of her, how unfair it was that I got to be the hero while she got nothing. Security finally had to restrain her. She was still screaming as they escorted her from the courtroom. Her lawyer, pale and defeated, requested a recess to consult with his client. "Denied," Judge Harper said coldly. "We're finishing this now." But before Judge Harper could render her verdict, Arthur Sterling appeared in the courtroom doorway. He'd apparently been watching from the hall. He walked straight up to me, ignoring the bailiff's shout. "You just cost us $750,000, he hissed. "We know where you live. We know where those kids go to school. This isn't over." Bailiffs grabbed him, but the threat hung in the air. Even if I won this custody case, Rachel had brought dangerous people into our lives. People who now saw us as targets. People who blamed us for their financial losses. Judge Harper ordered Arthur Sterling arrested for witness intimidation. She called a 2-hour recess for Rachel to be medically evaluated. As her breakdown raised questions about her mental state, Jennifer pulled me aside in the hallway. "We need to request more than just custody. We need a permanent restraining order, criminal charges for attempted fraud, and protection for you and the kids." "Will that be enough?" I asked, thinking of Arthur's threats. "It has to be." The children stood nearby with my neighbor. Emma looked shell-shocked from what she'd just revealed and witnessed. The twins were crying. I gathered all 3 of them into my arms. "I'm so sorry you had to see that," I whispered. "We needed to tell the truth," Emma said. She was going to win. That afternoon, we returned to court for the final time. Rachel sat with her lawyer, subdued now, mascara streaked down her face. Arthur Sterling was in custody. The gallery was full of people who had watched this family's dysfunction play out in real time. Judge Harper looked exhausted, but when she spoke, her voice was firm and clear. "I've been a family court judge for 22 years, she began. "I've seen many difficult cases, but this one will stay with me. The evidence is overwhelming and disturbing. Miss Rachel, you deliberately abandoned your children 10 years ago. You admitted as much to a private investigator. You made no attempt to contact them or support them during their formative years. You allowed Miss Amy to shoulder the entire burden of raising them, and by all accounts, she did so with love and dedication." Rachel stared at the floor. "You only returned when you learned these children stood to inherit money. Your custody suit was motivated entirely by greed. You brought fraudulent witnesses. You lied under oath. You manipulated the media. And today, you revealed in open court that you have never wanted to be a mother to these children." Judge Harper looked at the kids, her expression softening. "Emma, Jacob, Sophie, you've been through more than any children should endure. You lost your biological mother through her choice. But you gained a real mother through love. Miss Amy chose you every single day for 10 years. That's what makes a family." I couldn't stop crying. "My ruling is as follows," Judge Harper continued. "Miss Rachel's parental rights are permanently and irrevocably terminated. The adoption that Miss Amy completed 5 years ago is affirmed as valid and final. Miss Amy is the sole legal parent of these children, with all rights and responsibilities. Miss Rachel is ordered to have no contact with these children. A permanent restraining order is issued, requiring her to stay at least 500 feet away from Miss Amy and the children at all times. Miss Rachel is ordered to pay Miss Amy's legal fees totaling $45,000. The children's trust funds shall be overseen by an independent trustee appointed by this court, with no possibility of Miss Rachel making any claim or contest. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges of fraud, perjury, and attempted extortion." Judge Harper banged her gavel. "This case is closed." The courtroom erupted in applause. Jennifer hugged me. The kids threw their arms around me. Rachel sat motionless, destroyed. But even in victory, I felt the shadow of Arthur Sterling's threats. We'd won the legal battle, but I wasn't sure we were safe yet. The district attorney wasted no time. Within a week, Rachel and Arthur Sterling were both formally charged. Rachel faced counts of fraud for the fake psychiatrist, perjury for lying under oath, and attempted extortion for trying to gain access to the children's inheritance under false pretenses. Arthur was charged with witness intimidation, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of parole. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. Rachel was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security facility. Arthur, having violated his parole, was sent back to federal prison for 3 years. Their assets, what few they had, were seized to pay restitution. Rachel's gambling creditors came after her even in prison. She lost everything: her freedom, her boyfriend, any claim to her children or their inheritance, and whatever dignity she had left. I wish I could say I felt sorry for her. Maybe someday I will. But mostly I just felt relief that she was gone and couldn't hurt us anymore. Judge Harper appointed a trust administrator named Mr. Peterson to oversee the children's inheritance. He was a retired financial advisor, honest and careful. The money was locked down tight until each child turned 25, with strict guidelines that it could only be used for education and genuine emergencies. Rachel couldn't touch it, contest it, or make any claim to it, ever. The weeks after the trial were focused on healing. The whole family started therapy sessions, processing everything that had happened. Emma had the hardest time, guilt-ridden about her memories and what she'd revealed in court. The therapist helped her understand that telling the truth wasn't cruel, it was necessary. She'd protected her siblings and her real mother. Jacob had nightmares for a while, afraid Rachel or Arthur would come back. We installed a security system and changed our routines until he felt safe again. Sophie threw herself into art, creating dozens of paintings processing her emotions. Our house became a gallery of healing, colorful expressions of pain transforming into hope. School counselors worked with all 3 kids to handle questions from peers. The media coverage had made our story public, and kids can be curious and sometimes cruel, but the counselors helped them develop responses and boundaries. The community that had turned against me during Rachel's media manipulation slowly came back. Neighbors apologized for believing the lies. Someone organized a meal train to help us during the recovery period. The person who'd spray painted my garage came forward, apologized, and paid for professional cleaning and repainting. My employer gave me a promotion I'd been overlooked for during the trial. The raise meant we could finally build a proper emergency fund and start college savings beyond the inheritance. 6 months after the trial, life started feeling normal again. Emma was thriving in school, already taking advanced placement classes and volunteering at the local hospital. She still wanted to be a doctor. The trial hadn't broken her. Somehow, it had made her stronger. Jacob made varsity soccer as a freshman, the youngest player on the team. He scored the winning goal in the championship game, and afterward he ran to me in the stands and said, "Did you see, Mom? Did you see?" "Yes, baby. I saw. I've always seen you." Sophie's artwork was featured in a citywide youth exhibition. 3 of her pieces sold, and she donated the money to a charity supporting children in foster care. When I asked her why, she said, "Because we were almost foster kids, except we got lucky. We got you." I started dating again, cautiously. His name was David, and he worked as a physical therapist at the local hospital. He was patient, kind, and genuinely good with the kids. We took things slow. The children had been through enough upheaval. I wasn't going to rush anything, but it felt good to have someone in my corner. Someone who chose to be part of our complicated, beautiful family. We took our first real vacation that summer, driving to Yellowstone National Park. We hiked, saw geysers, spotted wildlife, and laughed more than we had in years. One night, sitting around a campfire under the stars, Sophie asked, "Are we going to be okay now?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. "We're going to be more than okay." Emma, nearly 16 and wise beyond her years, added, "We were always okay, because we had each other." Our house transformed over those months. The anxiety and fear that had saturated every room gradually lifted. We still had family movie nights on Fridays. Still made messy pancakes on Saturdays. Still went to the park on Sundays. But now we did it all without looking over our shoulders. without waiting for the other shoe to drop. We expanded our photo wall, adding pictures from the trial's aftermath. Not pictures of the courtroom or the pain, but pictures of us moving forward. The kids at the hospital where Emma volunteered. Jacob holding his championship trophy. Sophie at her art exhibition. Our camping trip to Yellowstone. David teaching Jacob how to grill. All of us laughing at something silly. Not a single photo of Rachel. She'd never been part of this family. Not really. I framed the court documents, though. The final order terminating her rights and affirming my adoption. They hung in my bedroom where I could see them and remember that I'd fought for my children and won. 1 year after the trial, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Emma came to me with something she'd been working on. It was an essay for her college applications, due in another year, but she liked to plan ahead. "Can you read this?" she asked. The essay was titled "What Makes a Mother." She wrote about the day Rachel left them, about the 10 years I'd raised them, about the trial and what she'd learned. Her conclusion made me cry. A mother isn't the person who gives birth to you. A mother is the person who shows up every day, who fights for you when the world turns against you, who loves you even when it costs her everything. My mother chose me when no one else would. She didn't have to, but she did, and that choice, repeated every single day for 10 years, made me who I am. Biology is an accident of circumstance, but love is a choice, and my mother chose love. I hugged her tight. "It's perfect. You're perfect." "I learned from the best," she said. That night, I reflected on the journey. 10 years ago, I'd been a 27-year-old teacher with a simple life. Then, 3 traumatized children landed on my doorstep, and everything changed. I'd given up my career, my savings, my social life, my freedom. I'd gone into debt, been accused of kidnapping, dragged through court, and threatened by criminals. But I'd gained 3 incredible children, a family, a purpose, a love deeper than anything I'd known before. Would I do it again, knowing all the pain and struggle ahead? In a heartbeat. Because family isn't blood. Family isn't biology. Family is who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when everything falls apart. Family is love made visible through action, through sacrifice, through choice. Rachel taught my children what a mother isn't. And in doing so, she gave me the chance to show them what a mother is. 2 years after the trial, we learned that Rachel had been released from prison early for good behavior. She moved to Florida, far from Colorado, and we heard through the legal system that she'd signed documents waiving any future claims to the children or their inheritance. She wanted a clean break, a fresh start without the burden of the family she'd abandoned. Fine by me. She'd never been part of this family anyway. Emma got early acceptance to a prestigious pre-med program. Jacob was recruited by college soccer scouts. Sophie was commissioned to create a mural for the local children's hospital. They were thriving in ways I'd only dreamed possible in those early, desperate days. Our family had survived, more than survived. We'd grown stronger at the broken places. I think about the envelope sometimes. The evidence that changed everything. Part of me wishes the children had never needed to hear those recordings, never needed to know how little Rachel cared. But Emma told me once that knowing the truth, as painful as it was, had set her free. She'd spent years wondering if something was wrong with her, if she'd been too much trouble, if she'd driven her mother away. Learning that Rachel's abandonment was about Rachel's failures, not theirs, had lifted a weight she'd carried for 10 years. The truth, even when it hurts, is still better than living with doubt. I learned lessons through this journey that I'll carry forever. I learned that motherhood isn't about perfection, it's about presence. I learned that families can be built through choice just as powerfully as through biology. I learned that fighting for what's right, even when the odds are against you, is always worth it. I learned that children are more resilient than we think, especially when they're loved unconditionally. Most importantly, I learned that love is a verb. It's not just a feeling you have, it's actions you take, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Our story isn't unique. All over America, there are people raising children who aren't biologically theirs. Aunts and uncles, grandparents, family friends, strangers who become family, people who see a child in need and say, "I'll show up for you." Those are the real mothers and fathers. The ones who choose to love when they didn't have to. Looking at my 3 children now, almost grown, becoming the incredible people they were always meant to be, I feel nothing but gratitude. Yes, the path was hard. Yes, there were moments I didn't think I'd survive. Yes, Rachel's betrayal cut deep and left scars. But I'd walk that path again. For them. Always for them. Because they didn't ruin my life when Rachel left them on my doorstep. They saved it. They gave my life meaning and purpose and love beyond measure. I was the lucky one all along. So if you're listening to this story and you're in a similar situation, raising children who came to you through difficult circumstances, know this: you're not alone. What you're doing matters. The sacrifices you're making are seen and valued, even when it doesn't feel that way. The love you're giving will echo through generations. And to anyone who thinks biology is the only thing that makes a family, I'll tell you what Judge Harper told Rachel in that courtroom. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up. I showed up for 3 children who needed me, and they showed up for me right back. That's family, that's love, that's everything. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, even when the world didn't understand? How did you find the strength to keep fighting? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button. It helps others who might need to hear this message find it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, family, and the strength we find in the hardest moments. Share this story with someone who needs to know that families are built through love, not just biology. Thank you for listening to our journey. I hope it reminded you that love is always worth fighting for, that truth eventually prevails, and that the family you choose can be just as powerful as the family you're born into. Wishing you love, strength, and the courage to show up for the people who need you most.